You and I, we've already determined that we met at some point.
Yep.
We don't know why or when, but we met somewhere. But you've been at Improving for quite a while. So it's just the short version of like how you got like who are you and how you got to where you are now, and why do you love conscientious capital? It's kind of a tongue twister.
Conscious capitalism.
Conscious.
Makes
I
it easier.
thought it was conscientious.
No.
It's conscious capitalism.
Conscious capitalism.
As opposed to unconscious capitalism. Yeah. Okay. All right. So, who are you, and how did you become somebody who cares so much about that?
Sure. So, Devil and Lyles. I guess that's easy and apparent.
Yeah, they'll already read that in the little thing when they press.
So I grew up in a military family. So that matters a lot in the fact that it shaped what work ethic and duty looked like in my life.
Yeah, I can see that.
Both my parents were military. Went into software development because it was a hobby. I got started when I was 8 writing software, and it just made sense to me.
Okay. What kind of software did you write when you were 8?
So I started off writing a bouncing ball graphic for a DOS machine as like basically a screensaver.
Like in QBasic?
QBasic, exactly. Yeah.
I made a Christmas tree in QBasic one time. So
So I had the ball that bounced.
Yeah.
And every time it bounced, it moved over 10 pixels and went up half the distance.
Yeah.
What I didn't realize was that the screen was a physical construct, not a conceptual construct. And so it just kept going off the screen and overwrote the protected RAM and corrupted the machine. Because I just kept storing the position in new memory addresses.
It just kept going.
And it just kept going.
Meanwhile, you're doing something else, and the machine is
like, oh, that's cool. Why won't it stop?
Right.
So that was my first program.
But that had to be like you must have thought that was like the coolest thing you'd ever done.
It was phenomenal. I copied it out of an old coding magazine. You remember these, like the quarterlies where it had code and it explained it, and that's how I taught myself.
Okay.
And
I was a little older when I made the Christmas tree, but I did the Christmas tree where like the lights.
Oh wow.
Blink.
Yeah, that was
so you could have it as your screensaver, like at Christmas time, right, on your computer, But that was back when people. This is early '90s, so I was working by then, or mid '90s, whatever, early '90s, and people didn't like companies. Everybody didn't have a computer on their desk.
Yeah,
like you had to go down the hall to the computer workstation. It was in like a little conference room at the end of the hall, and if you had to use the computer, you went down there to do it. But if you were special and important like I was, then you got to have a computer on your desk for which you could do things like make Christmas trees flashing. Yeah.
So I got lucky. My dad brought a computer home from the airbase that they were decommissioning.
Oh yeah.
And so I ended up getting it. I was able to start writing software very early. And it was always a hobby for me. Started my first software company in high school. Did that until I was going to go off to college and become a world famous soccer player. That didn't pan out.
Did it not?
And so I ended up going kind of the corporate IT route. I worked for Tyson Foods, writing manufacturing and yield management systems.
Exciting stuff.
Got into software consulting, and that's when I joined Improving in 2010. And found a place that both met with my kind of moral ethic as well as my passion for software. And so that's really where those two things came together, because Tyson Foods was all about making great food, and I'm still a customer today. There's nothing wrong with it. Just they didn't actually care about writing software. I remember our CIO very clearly saying, we're a chicken company, not a software company. I'm like, okay.
I mean, there's
reality
to that,
to that.
Right? Yeah. Typically when you're on the sell side like you are, those are your best clients are the ones who realize that they're not in the business of doing what you're doing. So your moral. So where did the moral ethic come from?
So it was kind of a blending of. So my mom's family is Catholic, my dad's family is Protestant, and so raised Catholic until the age of reason, and then realized Dad's church had a band, and so
you were just early. Now they all got bands.
Yeah, now they all have bands, except some of the Catholic churches.
Yeah,
and so. Kind of very much grew up with this idea that there's moral right. Okay. Moral right being to like care for the poor, care for the widows and orphans, and basically kind of what would Jesus do is kind of the slapsticker version of it. But that drove my kind of
Catholic church, by the way, they call that corporal works of mercy.
There you go.
To,
I didn't know.
Yeah, corporal works of mercy. Yeah, the Catholics were way ahead of you on all this stuff.
Yeah,
But-
absolutely. And so my dad and my mom both kind of paired that with work ethic. Like, I remember joining a baseball team when we first moved back to the U.S. from a bunch of abroad deployments, and it was hot. Like, it was North Texas, Amarillo, middle of the summer, 105 degrees.
Yeah.
And I'm sweating because we came out of northern Germany.
Oh yeah, so you were warm.
And I
Yeah.
was trying to acclimatize, and I was my coach was just a horrible, like, in your face yelling and screaming guy.
Yeah.
And I was like, I want to quit. My dad goes, you can quit at the end of the season.
Yeah.
You committed to your team.
Yeah.
You're gonna stick it out.
Yeah.
And it was like that was the pieces to it, right? Is anything
Right.
worth doing is hard.
Yeah.
And you're gonna want to quit, but you're not allowed to. And that there is this moral good we should all strive for. And so when I came to improving, we have been operating this way and gotten introduced to the idea of conscious capitalism, and that's where it kind of came together for me.
Right. Okay. So, you were. I'm looking at the clock because our producer forgot to start the counter. Fire you. I can't fire you. As soon as I start paying you, then I can fire you. So you found a place that was kind of already in tune with that notion, which is slightly less heroic than converting, but in my experience, it's very hard to get. Like when I was younger in my career, I would go into a company thinking that I was going to do something really significant and leave my mark and change things and all that, and it's really hard to do that. Like it's where I'm going with this is, you take a philosophy like this, even if it works perfectly, and I'm getting ahead a little bit, but this is kind of where I'm thinking is what I'm going to argue with you about is getting like the concept and the execution, as you know, in anything are different things. So I'm curious why was improving already this kind of in tune with this idea?
So a couple of things about improving that kind of give context to this. And so improving founded in late 2006 as a company called Blue Ocean Group. Blue Ocean Group was based Blue Ocean strategy, and that kind of we're going to do this differently. We're going to go uncharted waters, never been tried before kind of thing.
Right.
And so software consulting, everybody was going offshore, right? This was after the dot-com bubble burst, but before the financial crisis. Everybody's shipping off to as cheap and as fast as you can go.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
And we're like, no, we're going to do this differently. We're going to do object-oriented. We're going to do agile, and we're only going to do on-site here.
Yeah.
And it changed the way we interacted because you had to prove higher value and you had to prove that you were doing more than just writing software. Because if it's just writing software, it's data entry almost. So like it's just typing.
Yeah.
And so we started to try and understand the businesses we were working with and really try and make sure that we were crafting the right answers. And so the original friends that founded it then acquired Improving Enterprises from another set of guys and rebranded the whole thing to Improving. And those Jeff and Todd, who owned Improving Enterprises beforehand, came on, joined forces, ran the company with us for years. And so those original 14 friends that had kind of gotten together and done this did a couple of things different. One is they'd all worked together before and sold to Valtech and watched that kind of go crazy with Enron collapsing and all that. And they were like, you know what? We want to do this differently. We're going to hire great people and we're going to share rewards with them. So CEO, who did the round robin funding and all that, didn't take a salary for multiple years. He only kept 12%, 13% of the company.
Right.
And so the idea was, I came in a couple of years later, they gave me a founder's level stake in the company. And so it was like, okay, we're going to hire great people and we're going to share it with them because we collectively own the success. Now that collective ownership of success was more about you're going to lean in to grow your sum and that's going to grow everybody's sum, right?
Right.
Rather than kind of the socialist version of collective ownership of success where two people work really hard and everybody gets the benefit.
Yeah. Or everybody works hard and
Doesn't get the benefit.
and thinks that they're doing the greater good, but really there's like two guys at the top who were benefiting from the whole thing. Okay.
And so they started with that ethos. And so then they came later to understanding conscious capitalism by getting invited to it. And it was like, these are our people. We have found our tribe. They believe in running businesses the way we believe in running them. They see the world the way we see it. And we finally had vocabulary to put to the way we saw business.
Got you. Okay. So now, and the reason why I thought we could pause on that a little bit is because, so we're establishing that what we're going to talk about here isn't just something that you're like going around and just speaking about in the abstract. It's been in practice. You've watched at least your company and your 14 friends, do these things. So I'm curious. Maybe we should start with an explanation of what exactly. Now, I want to do. So we're going to do like the true up. So hey, Trev, could you bring up the one from Investopedia? Investopedia has a definition of conscious capitalism. I don't know if you realize this.
Nice.
Funny thing is, I read this and still didn't realize that it was conscious and not conscientious. So this is what Investopedia says. Conscious capitalism refers to a socially responsible economic and political philosophy. The premise is that businesses should operate ethically while they pursue profits. So, and you can read the rest of this, and it basically, the gist of it is that pursuing profits and operating socially in a way that, or socially responsibly in a way that benefits everybody, those aren't mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
So when you guys, is that where you're coming from? Is that the headspace that you're in there?
Not only are they not mutually exclusive, but we believe that in doing this, you massively increase the success, massively increase profitability. So Raj Sisodia, who did a bunch of the academic research for this, wrote a book called Firms of Endearment and talked about outperforming the S&P by 10x for companies operating that philosophy. When John Mackey and Raj got together and they wrote Conscious Capitalism, the book that kind of put all this together, it was years after Firms of Endearment, and went, no, there's a structure by which you can run a business this way to massive success, like Whole Foods, like Container Store, like improving. Like we've spent 13 years consecutively on the Inc. 500, 5000. We attribute that to running the business with that philosophy. Now, what I will say is it's harder. Because when you talk about a stakeholder model, which is one of those 4 principles.
Yeah, so what does that mean exactly?
It means that you go through and you map the people who hold a stake in your business. Not the ownership stake, but who could significantly impact, positive or negative, my business. So if I take my business, that is the community we operate in. Like if I make enemies of the community through some front page article or not caring about them or whatever, then they could cause significant issues for my business.
But isn't that kind of just a standard corporate like PR point of view? Like,
it is.
Like you have, like companies have always been thoughtful about public relations, and they even hire people to sometimes
They do it to avoid the negative. Because the other side of it is, what if I got the community raving fans about us? What if we supported them and they were thriving and growing? Now, there are user groups and there are nonprofits and all that. We give away our space for free at our office to make sure that they can thrive. Because a thriving tech community, a thriving community in Houston gives us better recruits, gives us potential clients, gives us better PR. Yeah. So it's both the positive and negative. Okay. If I look at our employees, very standard approach to identifying a stakeholder in our business. If our employees are significantly unhappy, our business suffers. If they're significantly happy, statistics show us that we're going to be far more likely to be successful. But do I include their families? Like the example I always use when we talk about this in onboarding is if you go home after a rough day at work, because you're going to have those. We do a challenging job. You're going to have a 10-hour day where you're exhausted and pissed.
Right.
If you go home and you gripe to your spouse, does your spouse go, but they take good care of you. They've invested in us. Our kids have friends there. You remember the big barbecue?
No, your spouse jumps on the wagon with you. And
they're like, you're right. You should quit. They have massive stake in our company
Yeah.
And almost no other company I talk to even acknowledges that influence, let alone tries to invest in it.
Really? Because, I mean, a lot of companies now, you know, when you look at and I tend to like hop around and work with different companies and things like this, and when you look at like benefits programs nowadays are much more oriented toward kind of like the whole employee and family than at least when I was in like the prime of my career. Like when you look at a typical like benefits list now, like this is all the things we offer. There's a whole bunch of stuff on there that's not like we used to get. Like you got your health insurance and you got your vacation and you got your whatever your 401k, whatever that was, right? And that was basically it. Now they have all kinds of other things that they offer, most of which I look at and I go, don't care, don't care, don't care, don't care, don't care. So that's in my mind, that's not an effective way. Like that, to me, that's like all noise. And maybe it's because I'm, you know, from the previous generation, and I go, yeah, I don't really give a shit about all that. But so, what are the kinds of things that you can do that actually makes it good for that gets those family member stakeholders on board with you?
So it varies, just like what you value in your compensation package varies. We run into this all the time. We have our benefits list, right?
Right.
I'm never going to use our maternity leave. Like that's
right.
I'm like, I don't care. Like, but somebody cares.
Right.
Right. And so our mental health benefits, I care a lot about. I've used them. And so I want to make sure that, you know, that one's in there for me. Got it. Check. I don't know when you walk in the door what you and your family are going to value on our benefits. But I do know that I'm going to put an entire buffet in front of you. And the breadth and depth of that buffet is going to show you that we care. And then through every action over your career, we're going to continue to reinforce that message for you and your family. I have no idea, individual to individual, what that's going to look like. But a policy and a benefits package isn't enough. Now, success for conscious capitalism is that the herd, that is everybody else,
right,
has to start doing some of these things, or they're losing the best talent because they can't keep them. And so when we look at the shift, right, the Fortune 50 got together and they signed the corporate ethics pledge a couple of years ago, and it was almost verbatim off of the Conscious Capitalism website. The idea is that it's not about any individual employee or any individual stakeholder, but it is about balancing our decisions to all of them. Because if I look at our owners, I look at our partners, I look at our vendors, I look at our employees, I look at community and industry, literally this is straight off our map. When we look at a major decision, like in the economic environment today, God forbid I end up having to sit down and look at layoffs, how am I serving those stakeholders
right,
while making those hard decisions? It doesn't make the decision easier. It actually makes it harder.
Sure.
But it typically either enhances the outcome or removes some of the negatives if you can live into those.
Yeah, okay. So so some of what you're saying, as I think about the corporate world in America, which is different from in some other countries, different, you know, I think good, better in some ways and not as good in other ways. Some of what you've said so far is not so much dramatically different thinking, but more like better execution of those ideas. Like I said, it's been some time now that HR departments or companies caught on to the notion that we need to offer like more stuff to people, but that doesn't make them. At what point can you say? Well, I guess what I'm saying is, do some people practice some of these techniques kind of accidentally without necessarily knowing that it's conscious capitalism, right?
Absolutely. There are unconscious capitalists all over the place, and some of them are better than others.
Yeah.
But the difference is conscious being that I am aware and intentfully making a decision. Right? HR departments do a lot of these things because they have to, or there's legal and compliance, or they're doing it risk mitigation, or they're doing it with a golden heart to try and take care of good people.
Right.
Right? And it's somewhere in that spectrum. But how many times does the CFO and the CEO simply dismiss the perspective because of the price tag? That's where, if you've adopted that philosophy, it hits every part of the business in ways that are hard to perceive. Like, one of the things we do is we do a survey of improvers on how they find value in their employment, because we use the big five motivators. But do you find value in utilitarian or finance, right? Are you money motivated primarily? Everybody's a mixture of those five motivators.
I'm in that group.
But I am too. It's my third motive, but it's not. Then we dig in and we're like, all right, so based on your answers, is it your paycheck? Is it your bonuses? Is it equity? Like, what's the horizon of utilitarian?
What's more important, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because there's nuance to it. And we want to invest in each person, but we want to get the most out of our money, because the noun is capitalist. We want to make sure that if I'm going to spend $130,000 on comp for that person and that person, that I get the most out of that. And for them, it might be extra PTO and it might be flexibility. And for them, it might be bonuses and equity. And as long as we're doing that appropriately, then we can balance those things.
Yeah. Okay, I can foresee. So there's a couple things I want to ask you about there, because having been in management roles, I also know you get into some sticky things in terms of offering the same things to the same people, right? That HR people get a little torqued about that sort of thing. But that's a little bit of a rabbit hole. So I want to come back up to this, because you said in the beginning, or at some point you said, not only are they not mutually exclusive, but you can be way more successful doing this sort of thing. So I want to kind of look at that big picture. There's one thing I want to get you to comment on this. This was Trev, get the Forbes article, which is always fun to look at, because Forbes has crazy amounts of advertising on their websites. But it looks like you got it all turned off. Perfect. Oh, he must be in Brave. Okay, so the rise of conscious capitalism. I don't know. Do you know this person, Gretchen Fox?
I don't.
I write about social and emerging media. Okay, so in the first paragraph, there's a wave of new business breaking into the zeitgeist. Okay, and this is all kind of warm up, but go down to where the stats. Go back. Okay, so this person is saying. So here's some significant. I forget what the lead in is to these stats right here, but here we go. Go up to the lead into this. And so she says the existing iteration is manifested in the current global, sociopolitical, economic. We find it. Here's where we find ourselves today. So, 42. So this is a bunch of what looks like we're out of balance, right? 42 people hold the same wealth as 3.7 billion of the world's poorest. 50% of the world's population, no increase in wealth. 82% of global wealth went to the most wealthy. This is all about imbalance. Lots of people unemployed. 85. This is where it gets a little more interesting. 85% of people who have jobs hate their jobs. 1.5 billion people are homeless. 63% of Americans have no emergency savings for even like $1,000 emergency room visit. Lots of people are malnourished. So this is a global perspective. 1 in 9 people lack access. Okay, this is clearly unsustainable. I don't know if I agree with that, because it depends on your definition of sustainable. Sometimes. And I'm a big Henry Hazlitt fan, so sometimes you have to let things be destroyed in order for them to be rebuilt. But is that the scope of this person is writing this article about conscious capitalism? Is that the sort of vision that to solve big world problems?
So it's an interesting perspective, because it's a point in time with almost no historical context. And so I'm going to try and tear that apart and put some historical context to it.
Yes, please. That would be good.
So between 1760 and 1789, a couple of major things happened. One,
wealth of nations,
and the advent of massive democracies. Right. And so when I look at those two pivotal moments in the world's history, basically wealth was almost linear to population up until that point, and basically static for 1,500 years.
Right. Based on families and
then it
dynasties and things.
exploded.
Yeah.
Now, when I look at exploded, has it benefited the top 1%? Absolutely. But has it benefited everybody else? Absolutely. So if you look at the reduction in racking poverty, these are people living in under $1 a day, under $4 a day, right? We've reduced that from over 3 billion to under 1 billion in the last 70 years.
Okay.
And so if I look at capitalism as a
That would
whole,
come as a shock to a lot of people who think that we're
well, if you look at all the negative stats,
right.
they'll tell you all the negative things. Like the 50% in the middle that were referenced a little while earlier are the 50% in the middle. The bottom has lifted heavily.
Yeah.
Now, does the top lift more? Yes.
Right.
But capitalism is not about balance. The same way that the American dream in that quote isn't about equality of outcome.
Right.
Right? But that you have a quality of opportunity to your innate ability.
Right. Yes.
Right? Some people are more valuable in what they produce to the world, like a cancer researcher who comes up with a way to solve leukemia is worth more than the person, sweeping a floor. Doesn't mean they're not valuable.
So I want to pause on that because I know what you're saying, and I want to make sure that it's not misinterpreted. You're not saying as a human they have more or less worth. You're saying that in terms of what they contribute,
their output to society.
To society, some people have the ability to produce more value in society than other people, right?
And this is where that whole moral and duty thing comes in. Right? There is not a human being on this planet that is not valuable and deserving of love and respect.
Right.
You get into some edge cases.
My mother-in-law, maybe,
murders,
like,
rape, etc.
yeah.
But let's assume that like a normal law-abiding person,
right?
But then you also have a responsibility to work. And when I say that, it is a personal viewpoint of like, if I'm not responsible of producing for myself and those around me, I'm kind of a waste of oxygen. Like if I'm not making my life better and the lives of the people around me better, I'm just consuming resources.
Yeah. So I'm with you on that, but I want to pause on that for a second because it's the old slippery slope, right? The old drifting. So if you drift too far away from individual responsibility, and so I'm not, so over here on one end you have Ayn Rand's, right?
It's all individual,
which is like the only reason that anybody should do anything is for themselves. And if we all did that, then we'd all be okay. She might have been right about that, but the point is, we're beyond. Like you can't.
It's an extreme perspective.
You can't. Once you're where we are today, we can't unwind to that point, right? So there's a fine line between what you're saying, which sounds right, but getting into shifting the responsibility off of myself to other people, or taking the responsibility off of people and putting it on other people to make up the difference. And so how do you navigate that?
And so that's where you get into for our company, and I'm going to answer this company and personally because those are two. They're two lenses on the same worldview. For our company, we navigate that with the stakeholder model. It is not success if I succeed for one stakeholder at the cost of another. Right? So this is where personal responsibility to produce is mine.
Yes.
Next logical step is to produce that in a way that does as little harm and as great a benefit as possible.
Sure.
For myself and others. Myself is still first in that because the motivation of personal achievement and the results that come from it is huge.
Yeah, and we've talked. This has come up on the show before with other folks looking at it from different angles, but where we basically say you can see that when people don't have that, when they lose whatever's motivating them to take care of themselves, they lose motivation very quickly, right? It goes downhill fast. I think it was Jason Lee was on here. He's talking about a friend of his who's a successful a successful businessman, has built a couple of different companies, has done very well for himself. When the COVID, the PPP loans became available, loans, we call it the loans that you automatically don't have to pay back.
Yeah.
He took them because he was like, well, I mean, we could use the help. And by the way, I've already given the government way more money than I ever wanted to give them. So if I could get some of them back, that'd be nice. And he noticed how very quickly he got lazy. He got not lazy. What did he say? He said, stop being hungry. And like the hunger that he had to drive his business, it was remarkable how he saw how quickly he lost it as soon as he was given something to help him out. So like that. So I guess I'm just elaborating what you said, but I think that like that individual motivation thing is a big key to like success in society in general.
And when we talk about capitalism, we talk about a system for organizing people. And people is always going to come down to psychology.
So that's interesting because usually it's an economic model, right?
Well, sure, but the only thing an economic model is ever going to allocate is labor and resources. That's it.
Fair enough.
And labor is people.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Whether that labor is people working on robots to do the job or whether that's people working on the job.
Yeah.
It's just people.
Right.
And so when you start looking at psychological and sociological motivations to achieve, they almost always boil down to the rewards, results, and accomplishments that come from it. And if you take those away, you create a system that is self-defeating. Now, if we figure out a way to keep humans motivated without the carrot, that's awesome.
What you just said is really significant, though, because we have so much in society today. There's so much push from certain corners to do exactly what you just to do the opposite, to basically like give people stuff to try to balance the scales or even things out, the equal outcomes thing. So say what you just said again, because that was good.
So if you take away the accomplishments, motivations, and rewards,
right,
you create a self-defeating system. Because our highest achievers,
I think that's the playbook we're running right now. We're running
the entire market, right? If you look at outside of, we'll say, the last 3 years in which a boatload of free money came in and did some crazy and we'll say damaging things to our economy.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. The Bitcoin fiasco and the GameStop fiasco and a few of these other things probably don't happen unless there's a ton of free-floating cheap money available.
Yeah, sure.
Now, I'm not saying that blockchain and Bitcoin is an overall bad idea. I'm just saying that the boom and bust psychology of gambling on free money goes away.
Same thing happened in .com. I remember, right? It was, big institutions were pouring money into these companies that had not established a way to actually make money. Right. Yeah. So, okay. So that's good. I think that's important.
And so when you look at this, we talked about the stakeholder model. Another one is a purpose beyond profit. Now, profit is the air you breathe as a company. Yeah. Without profit, nobody cares what my mission is. No margin, no mission. If I'm bankrupt,
funny how
nobody cares about me.
Do you notice that a lot of people seem to not get that today? Yes. Like it's so obvious, but they want companies to do things according to one agenda or another agenda, whatever it is, without and the fact that you want to make a profit actually makes you part of the evil empire.
So I was just having this conversation. My son is 19.
Okay.
And he's at college, just wrapped up his freshman year, and we were talking about like what are the biggest things plaguing society? This was the conversation back from church, actually.
Yeah.
And we talked about rampant nationalism. We talked about kind of unregulated AI. We talked about a few other things, and he throws in this last one, and he goes, I would say that it might not be a direct cause of things like climate change, et cetera, but like corporate greed is probably one of those things rampantly destroying our society. And I went, what's your example? Like, let's engage, right?
I'm curious to know too. Yeah.
And so he talked about some of the pieces, and ultimately it boiled down to like one of the like minimum wage arguments that John Mackey actually talked about in an interview. he talked about the minimum wage regulation in California was going to raise prices and mean they hired less people.
Mm-hmm.
And he caught a lot of flack for just bluntly saying, this is how we're going to deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, well, why didn't he just take it out of profit? I'm like, okay. So based on everything they've said, I mean, I don't have access to their books. I guess I could go look at Amazon's SEC filings, but 70% of their cost is labor.
Yeah.
And a 30% increase to that cost becomes 21% of their overall. Their profit margin is 17%. Where do you magically create the other 4%?
Yeah. When you talk real numbers, it becomes and people get all torqued when they hear about CEOs that get multi-million-dollar bonuses and things, partially because they don't understand the principles of risk reward.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, there are people who are lining their pockets and greasing each other's palms and whatnot. But the fact is that if you're going to take the job to be a CEO of a large corporation, you're kind of putting your life on the line there. Maybe not.
And you're subjecting yourself to a bunch of targeting, whether that's through social media, news, or legal. Like, there's a lot of risk to it.
And if you pull it off, then you ought to get a big reward. Because if you don't pull it off, then you might be done. You're finished, right? Yeah. So,
by the way, to put that in perspective, we talk about large corporations as if there's a ton of them.
Yeah.
There's really not.
Right.
If we look at out of every 100,000 companies founded, we'll get to 10 million in revenue ever. Right? These guys are not making multi-million. I run a company that we did 20-ish, 21-ish million. I'm not making multi-millions. That's not how it works for the vast majority of business owners. We're talking about an extreme few who are doing a job that maybe 30 people are qualified to do.
So this is another thing that people don't understand is not anybody can. It's not like that anybody can do that job. It's a different one. So here's what I would tell your son is so if he's concerned about things that have to do with the corporate world and greed, where I would take aim is not at just corporate greed itself, because I agree with you, it's really not. But what I would take aim at is the intertwining of the corporate world and public policy. And you throw greed in the middle of that and power, and now you have a whole bunch of if you want to really understand where the trouble is, and you look at what happened, and I won't call out any particular industries, but there are the usual suspects, and we know that, and some people would say oil and gas is tied up in the middle of that as well, but we could talk about pharmaceuticals and we could talk about whatever, but where you really see what I would say is things that fly under the banner of capitalism that probably do a lot of damage to society. It's in that, and it ties back to Henry Hazlitt, and the basis for economics in one lesson is that the trouble starts when people try to turn the dials to benefit one particular group without regard to how it affects the whole thing. Yeah. And you can look at example after example after example. So does your thing fix all that? Because it'd be great. If you could fix all that, it'd be great.
I think it makes it easier. It doesn't fix it.
Yeah, obviously.
Because ultimately, to your point earlier, it comes down to the personal responsibility and wherewithal of the people leading those businesses.
Right.
Because we have investor expectations, right? I've been told that conscious capitalism only works for private companies. I'm like, yeah, here's the thing. Private investors are intelligent. They are detailed. They are thorough. Way more than the market. Right? No private investor ever takes GameStop to 500.
I can attest. I've had some of those proctological exams myself. So from the private equity people.
So it doesn't solve it, and the pressure that our executives feel on a day-to-day basis to balance that stakeholder model is why the third tenet of conscious capitalism exists, which is conscious leadership. You have to choose to do the hard thing, even though it's hard. You've got to go in, and it's just like JFK with the "We Choose the Moon" speech, which, by the way, was right here at Rice. I found this out a couple of months ago. We choose to go to the moon, not because it is easy, but because it is hard. Like that purpose of we choose to run a business this way, not because it's easy. There are a lot easier ways to make money. Most of them ethical-ish. And
Yeah.
we choose to run a business this way because we want to be proud of how we did it. Like, I'm proud of our earnings the same way I'm proud of our community impact. Like, those are similar bars for me.
Yeah, fair enough. So that brings us around to, and see, I see Trev scroll down to the, I caught this quote. Can you put that up? A colleague recently, no, right there, that's good. A colleague I respect recently told me, when it comes to business, I'm cutthroat and cold-hearted. Now, I came from a generation that would say, yeah, those are the ones that are going to make it. Unfortunately, it is what it is. It's and so this person says, my first thought was, why does business really need to be cutthroat? And then she goes on to explain that there's this whole legacy of this is the way that we've always thought, so this is why we think the way that we do, because it's like the old why do you cut the ends off the roast to put in the pan? Do you know that story? The like
because that's your grandmother's pan was only that big.
It was only that big, right? And nobody remembers that's so every time I cook a roast, I cut the ends off. So what is it? So let's get a little bit more into. You mentioned 3 tenets, but we talked about things in between. So I lost track of what they are.
Stakeholder model,
right?
Or the stakeholder orientation.
Yes.
Right? Conscious leadership,
and the stakeholder orientation takes into account a lot of people that you don't always think about being stakeholders, right?
Exactly.
But they are.
And so the idea is that you sit down as a leadership group, or when you're founding your business, and you go, who's the stakeholders of my business? And you've got your normal characters, right? Your owners, your investors, your employees, et cetera.
Right.
And then you start reaching beyond it, right? For us, our partners, our industry, our community played into it. Given what we do, environment didn't show up because it doesn't, like, outside of buying different laptops.
How can it not? It has to be the first thing. Have you heard? It's the most important thing.
Yeah. And like safety, like sometimes shows up, but we work a desk job in an office typing into a computer.
There's not a lot of OSHA yellow lines on the floor or anything.
We're not working in like life critical type things and stuff. And so when we looked at it, it was like, other than like buying more sustainable laptops, maybe if they could be as powerful as what we need, like our environmental impact is tiny.
Yeah, sure.
And so we literally mapped it out, thought it through, and went, here it is. And it's on our website. It's easy to find. But the stakeholder orientation is really mapping that out for your business. Then you've got purpose beyond profit, right? Which is whatever that purpose is. It's not all philanthropic. It's not all social justice. Ours is to change the perception of the IT professional, right? IT is typically viewed as like, oh yeah, those are the weird people who can't talk to people in a closet somewhere doing work. Like, we want to change that because it's always over budget. No, it never works. They don't understand business. That's what we want to change.
Right.
Ours is not philanthropic or social justice. It is a problem with our industry in a world that is ruled by technology, that we don't trust the technologist.
Yeah, fair enough.
And so purpose beyond profit, conscious leadership, and then the last one we haven't touched on is conscious culture, is intentionally building the culture that will support the other 3.
Yeah, okay. So I'm with you. So to somebody like me, and Trevor likes to point out frequently that I'm of a certain age, some of that sounds like, at what point does it start to become contrived, right? Like we've all been in those sessions where they say, okay, everybody, today we're going to, and it's like, just kill me now, how do you like conscious culture and we have a greater purpose and all that, and the reason why kind of what I'm thinking is back to can you solve these great world problems? Well, we know that problems don't get really solved by that way. I was being a little facetious when I asked that, but problems get solved in small, at kind of at the foundational level in small pieces, and then eventually it all adds up to a difference. Yeah. So you have to be able to do what you're saying. You have to so your company can do it for the next 100 years, and it won't matter to anybody except the people that
interacted with,
that you have fun with, right? Yeah. So how do you? How do you, and I'm imagining doing some of the things that you're saying, and you haven't even explained the details yet, but just by the words you're using, I can imagine the eyeball rolling that's happening in some places with, you know, another one of these, like, you know, HR feel good, blah, 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 right? So how do you envision, I know you're just really focused on doing it right with your company, but if you're going to carry the flag for this notion, how does that happen in the world?
So I was president of the Houston Conscious Capitalism chapter last year. I'm kind of
okay, so
former
you're a little
chairman,
more, you're more vested. You're
active in the movement.
You're an activist.
I am, and I pay to be so. The funny thing is, no stipends, no kickbacks. I wish. It is primarily because I recognize that if it's just us and we do this perfectly, and we grow to 15,000 people, it'll be forgotten. And it won't matter. Capitalism is a way of organizing the world's resources against the world's problems based on what's valuable to society. That's effectively
That's a
what
good definition. Yeah.
And so all we have to do to solve the biggest problems in front of us is define the problem better.
Okay.
Now, Friedman would tell you the only responsibility of a company is to maximize the returns to its shareholders. That's literally verbatim.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, what if we change that statement? And what if society enforced that upon our companies that we buy from, that we interact with? The thing is, in capitalism, the consumer has all
the power.
The power.
Yeah.
And it's a moral exchange, right? Because there is no coercion involved. Like, I can't hold a gun to your head and go, sign this SOW.
Yeah.
That doesn't work,
Right.
right? It is elevating to humanity. If we look just at the last 200 years, that's grossly true. Food production, child mortality, all these things are falling. Outside of kind of the recent Ukrainian stuff, we lived in the most peaceful 80-year stint in human history.
Right. It's remarkable. Yeah.
But we talk about it like the world's about to end. It's like we hyper focus on negatives, which gives us this belief that everything's bad.
So why do you think? Why do we do that? Do you think? Because it's true.
It sells newspapers.
Yeah, it does.
It used to. It now sells clicks. And
if it bleeds, it leads. Yeah.
But
is that the only reason why? Is it really the media that just drives that?
So I avoid the term the media because I think it puts a fine point on a broad brush. And what I mean by that is the attention economy that was advent by Friendster and MySpace and even back to like AOL and pop-up ads. And it was all trying to get our attention to then get a share of our wallet. That's what it's there for. We got very, 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 very good as an industry in figuring out exactly what I need to bait in front of you to get your attention. It was a race to the bottom of the brainstem.
That's good.
Center for Humane Technology, I steal their quotes.
A race to the bottom of the brain.
To the base of the brainstem. We got great at that. And what we realized is human beings, through a whole lot of systems and evolution and kind of survival, have been trained to look at the egregious bad or the egregious good, but we overvalue the egregious bad.
Yeah.
If I tell you there's a 10% chance that you drop dead today of a heart attack unless you run a marathon, you'd probably go run a marathon just to avoid it.
10% is pretty high.
10% is pretty high.
Yeah. I wouldn't want to be on an airplane with a 10% chance of crashing.
It's funny you use that example
because
another piece around that was, 50% of AI researchers believe there's a 10% or greater chance of an extinction level event for humanity for unregulated AI to cause an extinction level event. Like, I wouldn't get on an airplane with a 10% chance of crashing.
No, I wouldn't.
But we are rapidly producing societal norms that get us there. And so if we reframe the problem, because right now the problem is framed to earnings for shareholders.
Correct.
If we can expand that definition slightly, we make different decisions as a society. Now, there are going to be companies who do it because they want to, because they believe that a better society and elevating humanity through business, which is conscious capitalism's goal, they will do it by choice. The laggards will be regulated into it.
It's an interesting alternative because what we see happening right now, and I mean like just here in the last couple of years, is a different attempt to expand that, maximize profit for shareholders, to create additional, to put more responsibility and expectation on companies. But what we see the attempt to do that, that's getting most of the attention right now and wielding a lot of influence, is to expand that to include lots of other things that fall under the heading of what I call dial turning, right? Which is trying to make things come out certain ways for certain people. And so we get into things like, like diversity hiring, and like I'm all for diversity, but mostly I'm just for who's ever the best person for the job should have the job, right? Now, some people will argue with me about that. Some people will say, no, it's more important that a certain person that certain people get the job, irrespective of who's the best person for the job, because that kind of contributes to this greater good, to try to change the imbalances in society. So, I understand the philosophical argument, but what you're putting out there is a different way to change, to expand the expectation or the purpose of a company in a way that kind of stays in line with what I would call natural forces.
That's the hope.
Right.
Now, we can look at the last 200 plus years and say, yeah, we've got a great body of evidence that says this will likely be successful. We also have a great body of evidence that says we got it wrong. We are certain, we being kind of the folks in the movement for conscious capitalism, as well as our executive team, we are certain that we don't have all the answers.
Yeah.
And that we are going to mess things up on a regular basis, and we're going to have to fix them. But that's okay, because capitalism, you talked about this in Construct earlier, there's an economic structure called destructive creationism,
right,
in which for new things to be created, old things have to die. Right? The ATM was created, and they said it was going to be the end of bank tellers. Now, the punchline to that story is we employ more bank tellers by over half than we did when the ATM was created.
Is that right? I didn't know that.
But it allowed for a decentralization of banks, because the teller was no longer an accountant.
Right.
Right? They were customer service. They were sales. And we were able to shatter the branch structure, which meant we needed more bankers.
Right.
But they had a different skill set.
Yeah.
Right? When we had auto switching phones for operators, when we created like the dialing system, we displaced a ton of phone operators who then went into, by and large, I'm making some generalizations, right?
Sure.
Went into the early side of telecom and the early side of the internet and computer science and created a boom.
All kinds of things, right? Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
There is never a zero sum. I was talking about this with like when Ford and GM and everything, it was like they're too big to fail, is a fundamental misunderstanding of economics.
Right.
Ford has a ton of assets. GM has a ton of assets. Like all these major manufacturers, I'm not picking on those, but the ones that took a bailout because of the cratering kind of auto space, what was this, 15 years ago, 14 years ago?
Yeah.
And it was too big to fail. I'm like, that's not how that works. Because what ends up happening is they go into bankruptcy, and then they restructure. It allows them to renegotiate their union labor contracts. It allows them to kind of trim down to the company they probably should have been already.
Yeah.
And they come out leaner, meaner, and fighting with it. Dodge did this and came out early of the bankruptcy, paid back all of the governmental loans that helped get them through it, and turned into one of the most profitable automakers for decades.
Right.
And so, like,
that was the
economics
thing, right?
Yeah. Economics does not allow assets to just sit in capitalism.
Right.
And so what ends up happening is too big to fail turns into too big to bet on the next guy that's going to donate to my campaign.
Yeah.
And that's a bad game.
Yeah. That comes back to my whole intermixing of corporate and public affairs.
Free markets, perfectly free markets, is a scary place. Like, even I will recognize regulation's important, and regulation forces you to consider a stakeholder. Like the EPA forces companies who have significant impacts on the environment to consider the environment because it has teeth. But there's a fine line between that and trying to control a market outcome for some agenda.
Yeah, I'm with you. So I'm really torn on regulation because by and large, I believe I see, especially at the federal level, because they just mess up so many things. But the reality is so I could take a purist view and I could make economic and philosophical arguments that would echo the writings of some smart people that say, any regulation, any government interference whatsoever. We talked about this a few episodes back with Wes Riddell, who was a Texas congressional candidate, and he calls himself a Jeffersonian Republican. So if you're familiar with John Adams and Thomas Jefferson, the things that they argued about. But we were talking about Frederick Bastiat, the law, and if you take that view, really the only thing that the government ought to do ever is the same thing that you or I would do individually to protect our life, liberty, and property. Like, period, the end. Anything beyond that is unnecessary interference and what he would call legal plundering. But the reality is, and so we could have that argument at a philosophical level, but the reality is we're way past that now. And you can't, so the government interference, if you want to call it interference or if you want to call it helping, sometimes I want to tell them to just stop helping, right? But it's like, stop helping. But whatever the case, like, the dial turning has already begun and it's been going on for a long time. And you can't just like unwind all that and go back to a complete a completely clean environment. So we have to have some way to take where we're at and move forward in a way that doesn't keep making it worse, right? Like it's the situation that we're in. We can't. So we can. And
let's be fair to where we are, in that it's hands down better. Explain
that a little bit, because I'm with you on that.
Let's go back 1950s, 1960s, Leave It to Beaver, the idyllic, nostalgic American dream.
Yeah.
With life expectancy in the 60s.
Yeah.
And a massive disparity between the haves and the have-nots.
Right.
Right. The kind of interesting economic situation that got created by a whole ton of people dying in a world war.
Yeah.
And so you
look at the New Deal and the whole bit, right?
You look at all of this and you go, are we better off nowadays?
Yeah.
Where we have the largest quantity and variety of food ever produced, right? Where we have massive availability. Our level of poverty, and I air quote poverty, in the United States is still at the 15% marker for the world. Like, a poor person here,
right,
on food stamps and housing credits and all these things,
right,
is doing better than a significant portion of the populace of this planet. And so, yes, are there things we need to do better? Absolutely. But can we really look at it and honestly, objectively, I'm a vicious data person, say it's a failure? So yesterday's solutions to these problems created today's problems, and today's solutions will create tomorrow's problems. There is no perfect world that we're ever going to get to. Utopia will not exist. Have you talked to Klaus
Schwab? Because I think he's got something in mind. he's got something up his sleeve, or whatever that weird suit is that he wears.
I believe humans are flawed, and every system that humans create will be flawed. But as long as we pursue perfection, we will incrementally get closer. The American dream, the American institutions in our republic were always meant to be work in progress, because we knew from the founders to today that we weren't going to get it right. Interestingly enough, party rags and massive division and all these things are not new things. The reason we know Thomas Jefferson had kids with his slaves was because his buddy, who he hired to run a newspaper to eviscerate his political opponents, wanted a job at the State Department.
Yeah.
And he refused to pay him 2 salaries. The next thing he did was write an expose. Like, this whole partisan politics and trying to use the media.
Yeah.
Now the tools have gotten better, right?
But yeah, hey, Trev, can you find that Klaus Schwab in the spacesuit picture? Because that'll be fun. We'll throw this in just for fun. So I'm really glad that you got on that little soapbox that you just got on, which is very good. Because a lot of times when people are trying to do something new to fix, see, there we go. Like, why don't you want to trust your future to that guy? Because he's got it. I know you think there's not a utopian scenario out there, but this guy's
a Vulcan ceremonial robe. That's awesome.
He's got it figured out. Like, we just need to do whatever he says, I think, because that's like, yeah, like when you look at that, can't you just hear Spock saying the good of the many outweighs the good of the few? Like, I definitely want to. So while we're waiting for his utopian society to come along, I really like, because so many times when people are saying, we need to do better, we need to fix this, oftentimes it's with the sense of, like, we've got this thing that's horribly broken, and it's terrible, and the system is rigged, and people are that right? Like, there's a lot of, like you said, we focus on the negative to the point that we think, like, there's people in this country right now, they want to burn the whole thing down. You can't even have an argument anymore about the Constitution, because it used to be that we would argue, like, everybody agreed that the Constitution was, like, the right thing. We just argued about the interpretation.
Yeah.
But now we have a view that says, no, like, that's bullshit. That was written by a bunch of, like, white supremacists, and we need to have a completely different way of doing things. So we're not going to get it. We don't have time today for that one. But what you just said is, what we have today is dramatically better than what we had before. And now what you're doing is you're looking for okay, how do we make it even better? Like, where do we take it from here? Is that a fair assessment?
Absolutely. And the fun part about this to me, I say fun kind of ironically in that, is we can sit here and talk about all the mistakes we've made in the last 200 years. Right? 250
There's a few, you know.
We've made a slew of them.
Yeah, Federal Reserve. Can we start with that one?
So, like, we have made a lot of them, right? And oftentimes, it was the reasoned difference between dissenting parties that created the problem. Now, it was better than the extreme problems on either end, we hope.
Yeah.
But the middle ground is how a minority representative government is supposed to work. Two-party government ensures the minority opinion is heard through debate and through all these things. It's intended to work this way.
Yeah.
But it also means that we have to own the principles that we're aiming for. Now, so as a part of a leadership and growth program I was going through, I had to take what they called a value or mindset field trip. So I went to a Beto rally. And
did you wear the "I'm a Beto male" T-shirt?
I did not.
Because that would
wore
be fun.
Roughly this. But in talking about what we wanted for our nation from the 50,000-foot view, I agreed. I agree with them. We want to take care of the poor. We want to make sure that people have equal opportunity.
Yeah, fair enough.
It is when I get into the nuts and bolts of how
to do it
that it all falls apart.
Yeah.
But we all still agree on the principles that the country was founded on. I say all, that's a generalization. The vast majority still agree.
If you understand what those principles really are, instead of this other notion that people have, then you're right, nobody would disagree with those objectives.
Principles are only principles if they require sacrifice. Up till then, they're conveniences.
Fair.
And so we have lost the willingness to sacrifice because we have kind of created an idol out of being a victim. I can get tons and tons of sympathy and likes and all this on social media by being the victim.
You can even be on a beer can if you work hard enough.
There are real victims in the world. But rarely are those the ones lauding their victimhood on Facebook.
No, because they're too busy trying to figure out what they're going to eat. Right. Yeah.
Or how to deal with extreme trauma.
Or how to keep their family members alive or something like that, right?
I believe that we are coming to a renaissance. Because the funny part is we do this oscillation with our country often, in which we divide and then we come back together, right? We talk about like worst division since the Civil War. But after the Civil War was the golden age, right? Where it was a massive set of prosperity for the country. And we came together back on principles. Now, I hope it doesn't require a civil war. I don't think it will. I think reasoned heads will prevail. But we also saw this with the Democratic Republicans and the Whigs and the Federalists. There was massive division in party rags. Come back together, golden age. And so I believe we're coming to that renaissance. It is if we can stem from the extremist view on either end. Because the extremist view of I want it all to be government controlled because greed is the problem. Is problematic.
And government doesn't have greed ever.
It's problematic because of that and because we've never seen it work.
We don't have one example.
On Earth, it has never worked. When they socialized retirement in the UK, they're now back to offering privatized retirement because socialized retirement doesn't have the returns it needs. Privatized healthcare, they're back to offering augmenting private healthcare because of the problems with nationalized healthcare. And so when we look at all these, there's tons and tons and tons of examples of trying it. But I haven't found one. And I'd love for, if somebody knows of one, send it to me because I'd love to adjust my beliefs if new evidence comes up. But we haven't found one where it works. What we do have is a ton of evidence that capitalism will solve some of the biggest problems we've ever faced. Whether that was being able to feed a population of 8 billion. We couldn't have done without capitalism. You want to talk about GMOs and you want to talk about those kind of things being problematic for society. It's like, awesome. We'll get rid of all of it. We'll go back to original crops. Which 7 billion people would you like to starve to death?
Well, we saw this on a smaller scale in, which country was it over there? Was it Bangladesh or which one was it that said, okay, we're not going to use fertilizers anymore. And like,
I don't know the story, but
okay, it was or Myanmar or anyway, but it was a country that had experienced extreme poverty and Sri Lanka. That's right. Sri Lanka banned synthetic fertilizers. So Sri Lanka had been living happily feeding their entire population because some nice people had come along at some point in the last 50 years and taught them how to use modern farming methods. And so they haven't had hunger problems. There we go. We could only support 2 to 3 billion people on Earth if we just relied on natural fertilizers. So
which 6 billion people do you want to starve?
And so whoever this joker was that's in charge of Sri Lanka, he says, because he's like jumping on the environment bandwagon, he says no more synthetic fertilizers because it's destroying the planet. And the next thing you know, what's that? You got it?
Justify the Sri Lanka. They justified why they couldn't use just the organic manure.
It takes twice as much land to produce all the cows that you need to get the manure. Synthetic fertilizers are friend to say.
But also, aren't cows killing the earth?
No. Did you not hear? They just found out they're not. You can take the diapers and the masks off your cows now because it turns out it's not causing the problem that they thought they were. I just saw that in the Wall Street Journal, I think.
So the methane outgassing and all that.
It's apparently not
as big of a thing.
It's not a problem. It's not a problem. So, but to your point, so what happened was the country, as it said in the headline here, just imploded. As soon as he said that, everybody's like, "Oh, how the hell are we going to feed everybody?" It's like it's not going to work. That's in one country, right? So, but I like
same thing could be said for oil and gas, right? Like if we decided today we were getting rid of fossil fuels, the outcomes, which are largely predictable. The DoD actually published a paper going, if we stopped all production of oil and gas, and we knew 2 years in advance, right, World War III would happen and 7 billion people would starve. It's effectively what they came down to. Because it takes a lot of energy to feed this many people. Now, that's not saying there's nothing wrong with those. It's just saying that how about we work towards a future-looking alternative rather than blow it up?
It's so that's a topic for another day, but it's remarkable how many people today don't understand that you can't just simply stop the hydrocarbons. You can't just simply turn them off and turn on all the windmills and the batteries.
One of the reasons the Titanic sank.
Yeah.
They saw the iceberg.
Yeah.
You can't turn something that big that quick.
That is exactly right. So, but I really like this point about, so when you are talking about conscious capitalism and you're what the grand poobah of the local chapter?
I was. It's now a guy by the name of Richard Fox who's leading it. I'm president emeritus, I think is the term for me.
Okay, very good.
So I'm doing my 3rd year on the board.
Yeah.
And so the idea is, one, education of what it is and what it isn't, things like this. And then the second one is talking to business leaders, because you made this point earlier. It's like we can all talk theory and concept, etc. Vision without execution is hallucination.
Yeah. As much fun as that is, yeah.
Action or execution without vision is just chaos.
Right.
But very few things will change the world as fast as execution behind a purposeful vision.
Yeah, I'm with you. I really like the notion that conscious capitalism is not something that says, okay, we've been doing it wrong and it's broken and we need to fix it. What you're saying is, at least in this country and probably in a lot of places in the world, but this is a show about America, so that's all we care about. Capitalism has served us well. You mentioned several examples of how it's better now than it was before. You can scream and yell and make your social media videos and, with like the veins popping out of your neck, whatever. The fact of the matter is there's lots of evidence that it's better now, that capitalism has served us well. But what you're saying is, okay, now what can we do with it to make it even better?
Absolutely.
And to solve more problems. And then you get into the principles.
And that's
that
where you get into some fun things. Like we look at China, right?
Yeah, that's a fun thing.
Capitalism is powerful enough that they adopted it. Now, they adopted it inside a box to take advantage of it.
Right.
But they did adopt it, and it cut down massively on the human rights infringements.
Yeah.
Because they had to then compete in a global economy in which companies and their consumers would punish for those becoming visible.
Yeah.
Now they got better at hiding them, and
they learned how to dominate the Amazon search algorithms, and I think that
you get into some wicked fun things where it's like, okay, awesome. So now we have a new set of problems today. There's a theory in computer science around performance optimization. In any given system, there is truly only one bottleneck that's limiting the performance of the system. Now, you can spend an infinite amount of time and money trying to solve the symptoms around it.
Right.
But when you truly solve the bottleneck,
right,
the entire landscape of the system will change. And so you have to reevaluate where the bottleneck is now.
Right.
Like you can't do one analysis and go, here's the order, and then solve them in order, because as soon as you solve number one, everything else changed.
Yes.
Capitalism is similar to that, in that these are today's problems. And if we can change the simple rules that drive that system, everything will change. And we'll have awesomely terrible new problems tomorrow. And that's not saying that today we don't have problems. We do.
But this goes back
to
the thing that you said at the beginning, which is not only is that I forget, making money and doing good not only are they not mutually exclusive, but when you put the right combination of things together, you can do way better. But you also admitted that you have at least at this point, you have analytical evidence to support the fact that you might be tremendously right, or you might not be right. So
we know we are more productive, more successful. That's a tough term because it's pretty amorphous and everybody describes it differently. Than without this philosophy. We can look at our compatriots, we can look at competitors, we can look at economic history of different companies like ours and go, we have outperformed hundreds of thousands of them. But we also know we have problems that we need to go solve in our company, in the way we manage, in how we have grown and scaled. And so conscious capitalism isn't a panacea, but a philosophy by which to tackle the complexities that will come to us.
Fair, yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, because you could see some people that would say, that would listen to what you just said and go, okay, well, hooray for you and all the people that work for your company. What does that do for the rest of us, right?
And the good thing is, it's fairly easy to go through and adopt.
Yeah.
And the vast majority of companies, and I want to make sure that I'm bluntly clear, the vast majority of the companies I've ever interacted with are good companies. They're led by good people with good intent.
That would come as a shock to many people.
Like, I have never met somebody, I literally mean never met somebody, who's running a business and purposefully taking advantage of a group or a situation that would be amoral or unethical. Now, I'm certain they exist, but I talk to thousands of business leaders.
Yeah.
And I've never come across one. Now, when I go through and look at that, most of them are doing some of these things. If we can get them to do one more thing, our entire economy and how it serves the people in it goes way up.
It would change, right?
And the more success companies that are run well, who serve a diverse group of stakeholders, the more success they see, the more people who don't believe the philosophy will imitate it to get the outcome. How many Whole Foods-like companies
True.
or divisions of not Whole Foods-like companies
Yeah.
spun up after the success of Whole Foods? I got a Walmart neighborhood market near me, and I am certain the Walton kids didn't care at all about the Whole Foods model until they saw the success, and they're like, ooh, we can stamp and ramp that.
Yeah. And they have, boy, I got one here and I got one here, like both directions.
And
I
I shop at one. Like, it's nice. It's a
They're-
good experience. It's way better than going to a normal Walmart.
They are pretty convenient, I gotta say. They're pretty nice.
But you can also sell $11 cucumber water at Whole Foods because the value it
Yeah.
creates for the consumer that shops there. Like, I
Yeah.
can sit on the outside and go, I'll never buy that, but I'm not their customer.
Yeah.
The person buying it is their customer who feels well served by them.
Yeah. I feel like we should wrap up, but I also realize that we have to keep talking because our producer just walked out the door. I don't know what he's saying. I guess he's coming back. But no, it's good. So I have to admit I was a little skeptical at the beginning, but I get where you're. Yeah, it's. I kind of have it bugs me whenever people say that almost like you can't fix anything without categorizing everything up until now as garbage, right? And the degree to which we do that now is rather intense. It's not just any more people that just say, yeah, we've been doing it all wrong, and my idea is better. It's like in the public square, which today is mostly social media, and it's like hatred and this vehement in both from all directions, right? It's
You have to vilify the opposition almost.
so intently. I mean, so intensely that it's. There he is. He just came back. We were ready to wrap up, and then I looked up, and you weren't there. So I was just kind of keeping it going. I was doing that Jackie Gleason like tap dance thing where you just kind of keep it going.
But on that ilk, when
Yeah.
you talk about kind of the discussion of differences, we talk about this often at our office. Everybody got to the point they are with their software systems, with their company organization, with their society, because of decisions that were made with the information they had at the time. Because we have a different perspective and potentially more information today, it is not wrong that we decide differently. That doesn't mean their decision was wrong.
Right.
Right? And so this is how do you paint a brighter future without vilifying the past?
Yeah.
And it is to accept the value of the past without doing what one extreme of the argument will do, which is to say that was the only way to get that outcome. If we change anything, we'll destroy the outcome. I believe we can change the way we operate capitalism and keep the value in excess production that has created the wealth of nations.
Yeah. And keeping true to what capitalism is, as opposed to doing something, well, like you mentioned, China, where you kind of took. So what never like smells right to me is whenever people say, oh yeah, capitalism, but here's what we want to do with it. And then you look at it and you go, that it's not capitalism anymore. Like you're doing something different now. And I don't know, like God bless, but it's not going to work the way that this has worked.
The same way that democracy is dependent on an educated voter.
Yeah.
Capitalism is dependent.
That's why we don't have
on
one, by the way.
Purchasers taking responsibility for their decisions.
Yeah.
You get to vote with your dollars.
Right. Right.
And right now, we are voting for a few things. We're voting for fast and cheap. I don't care how you got there.
Yeah.
We're voting for overseas manufacturing against U.S. labor because it's cheaper. We are voting for these things with our dollars. We're voting for rampant development of AI with our dollars. And in capitalism, that is saying, as a society, that that's the direction we want to go. And if we want to change, we either force those companies to decide differently to get our dollars, or we take our dollars somewhere else. And it's the personal responsibility of my purchase decisions is the thing that we have largely, as American society, gotten away from in the last 50 years. Right? Think about the last time you saw a big sticker that said "Made in America."
Yeah.
And we're willing to pay twice as much to buy it.
Yeah.
Gallery Furniture, by the way, does this beautiful.
Well, actually, my wallet's over there, but my wallet, I probably paid 3 times as much because it's even made in Texas.
Yeah.
But it didn't have a big sticker.
I got a saddleback leather one out of Fort Worth. I probably paid 3 times as much for it, but it's made
Probably
in
the same
Fort Worth.
guy. Is it the Bullsheath? Is that guy?
No, Saddleback.
Oh, Saddleback,
similar.
right? You said that. I'm sorry. But you're right, and it's just when I thought we were going to wrap up, but you just opened up a whole new thing, because in the same way that having an educated voter is necessary in a democracy or in a representative republic, in our case, which, by the way, we have a shortage of educated voters right now. We have a shortage of educated consumers. So, I don't know what we do about that.
We don't need their permission to educate them. This is probably the biggest realization I ever came to in the movement of conscious capitalism is I can educate our consumers at the same time that I'm selling to them through marketing, through advertising, etc. And simply by doing it, the competitors will try and follow suit because they'll lose otherwise, because you ask different questions. Think about, and this is going to be a terrible example, but it's the one that came to mind. So when the Attorney General, or sorry, not the Attorney General, the Chief Medical Officer in the U.S.
Oh.
Yeah. I've forgotten the name. It's General something.
The Surgeon General.
Yeah, Surgeon General. Thank you.
Surgeon General
Required the warning on a pack of cigarettes.
Yeah.
They had to start advertising differently, right? They had talked about the T-zone and the health benefits of smoking for 15, 20 years. They'd been advertising these things with dubious studies, etc. So they had to market differently. And the first one out the door, double roasted tobacco, right? And there's a great kind of episode satire of this on Mad Men, but it's a real story. And they're like, but that's the process all cigarettes get made with. And they're like, but nobody said it yet.
Right.
By saying it, everybody else was forced to change the way they marketed.
Yeah.
And so if I come in and I go, not only are we going to do a great job for you, we're going to deliver on time and on budget, we're going to earn your trust, all while supporting the community and helping to drive innovation in Houston for all these places. They look at our pitch and go, oh, wow. And the next one's, we'll come in on time, on budget with a quality product.
Yeah.
And they lose because of it.
Yeah.
And the free market will enforce that they either adapt or die.
Yeah, fair. Yeah, I mean,
so we can educate the
there's
populace
a lot of complexities in there,
simply by advertising to them.
Right.
And you're seeing it happen, by the way.
Yeah. So like how
the Super Bowl ads. I
missed them this year.
Okay, so Super Bowl ads, YouTube ads, whatever you want to look at it. Go watch some of them. Right. One in every 3 is going to mention some social initiative of that brand. Why? because they're trying to differentiate themselves. Keep in mind, light beer does this better than anybody else.
Yeah.
There are 4 light beers that are the major folks, right? You got whatever, Miller, Coors, Bud, Michelob, whatever. They're all effectively the same. And somebody's going to get very mad at me for saying this. I'm not a beer guy. But they're all effectively hop water, right? Light hop water. But they differentiate on what they associate the brand to and their initiatives.
Sometimes it backfires a little bit.
Sometimes it backfires.
Yeah. Yeah.
But people choose. They walk up to the case and they choose.
Right.
Typically, not because they truly prefer the flavor of Bud Light over Coors Light.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's fair. You're right.
How many people are shooting cans of Bud Light right now?
Yeah.
Like, not because they just decided they didn't like the flavor.
Right.
But because they put themselves next to an issue that didn't resonate with the market.
Right. Right. Yeah. Fair enough. So,
right, wrong, or indifferent. I'm not making any moral judgments.
We actually talked about that on the last episode, Kid Rock and his little demonstration there where he shot up the beer. Yeah, all of these things. So these are all great mechanisms that you're describing. They all depend on the people behind these mechanisms having the right motives, and not just the right motives as in doing good for the world, but subscribing to ideas and philosophies that actually work, right? Because there's lots of people that are subscribing to things today that, like you could really question the benefit of trying to force, I'm just going to pull one example out of thin air, trying to force companies to track and report their scope 3 emissions. Like, are we really ever going to be able to do that? I don't know. Maybe not. What's the benefit of it, right? All those things are already being captured in other places. So, but we pick these things, right? And we say, and they get imposed on everybody, or it's something that the same way that you're describing. We think about how many people today automatically accept the notion that companies, industries need to do something to fight climate change, right? People accept that as a given. Now, we don't have time today to argue about whether that's true or not. But the point is the reason why people accept that as a given is not because it was ever proven to them in front of their face in black and white. Like, the reason why people accept that climate change is a problem and that companies are on the hook to do something about it isn't because they got it explained to them in scientific, logical principles. They subscribe to that idea because that idea has been propagated into people's minds through other ways, right? So, which is not too different from what you're describing. The thing is, what are we gonna, if we're gonna educate? So, I guess what I'm saying is, people are already being educated without their permission. Like, it's already happening. The question is, what are we teaching them, and who's doing the teaching, and is it something that's really designed to work and to benefit the world, or is it something that's designed to benefit a select group of people, right?
And that's the piece of it that we haven't dug too deep into, is the fact that results will educate. Like, I'm fairly certain there are only 2 things that are going to survive the apocalypse, maybe 3 if you include spam. It's going to be cockroaches and business.
Right.
Because business is the way that we have come to interact and create value for each other. Right? Like, I want to pay my mortgage, and you want a system that helps find leaks and emissions in your refinery. We can come to an agreement.
I think you're right, because if you watch the early Mad Max movies, like The Road Warrior, business survived. There's no question that business survived.
And so results will educate, because other business folks are always looking for a way to have an advantage, a way to be different, a way to gain more market share, higher margins, whatever it is. For us, what we did was we defined how we were going to solve our problem, right? We took those 4 principles and we created a scorecard. That scorecard's got 4 different parts. It's got finances, because no margin, no mission. If we're not profitable, if we're out of business, nobody cares, right? We've got operations. How well are we operating our business and doing the things that we know we need to do, right? And that's receivables and client management and all that fun stuff. Culture. how well are we maintaining the core tenets of what we believe are our culture, right? From public speaking to community support to all these things.
Yeah.
And so in each of those areas, and services was the last one of like, how well are we operating these other things? Right. And so when we do all of those things, right, user groups hosted, public speaking, all that, we measure those month in and month out.
Yeah.
And we go, are we winning the game? Now that game is defined by us. Every
Sure.
business gets to define their version of the game.
But this is where the capitalism element comes in, right? Is
we believe those things
if
are
you do
going to
it
drive
wrong,
massive returns.
right.
We
But
just 4x the valuation or 10x the valuation in 4 years
oh wow, that's
doing that same thing.
amazing.
13 years on the Inc. 500, 5,000. Hundreds of thousands of companies have been on that list in that time frame. Only 12 have ever gotten to that step.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, but you touched on an important thing there, which is that you're defining those things for your company. If you bet wrong, this is where like the natural forces of capitalism come into play. So if you're doing this, and 100 other companies are doing the same thing, and some of you get it right and some of you get it wrong, like that's going to all eventually come out in a wash.
Yep.
Right. But
if I get it wrong, I lose my life savings and the investment that I've spent the last 13 years building.
yeah,
But
yeah,
if I get it right, I get to go make more bets.
right.
Because the top 1% that are often vilified in capitalism
Yeah.
are not just sitting on piles of gold. They're
They're not?
putting that money back out to work, buying government bonds to help with debt or to, give
Yeah.
them a guaranteed return but limit foreign investment, or they're starting businesses or investing in next generation medical or technology and innovation. Like they're putting that money to work because otherwise it just keeps shrinking.
Yeah, it's very Reaganomics of you. Yeah, you're right. You've subscribed to that evil notion,
Trickle-down economics.
that anti-Keynesian idea. So, all right, this is good. I feel like we could probably keep talking, but we'll probably end up saying the same thing again.
No worries.
So, so thank you, Devlin. Lyles? Is that
Lyles.
Lyles? Devlin Lyles? Yeah. So, well,
Irish Gaelic, it throws everybody off.
it's yeah. There are some Irish names that you go, like, I don't even know, how do you put those letters? Like, I can't even begin. So yours is easy. But thanks, appreciate it. And I got to say, I was a little bit skeptical. I was like, okay, I really did say, when Corey told me, yeah, he speaks about conscious capitalism, and I said, the first thing I said was, it sounds like something the millennials dreamed up. So
I'm right on the cusp.
but
84. I am a millennial.
are you? Yeah, but you're kind of like right in the middle. So I'm in the middle between the irrespective of what Trevor says, I am in the middle between the boomers and the Gen X.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to be in that. Yeah. So not boomer.
Boomer.
One of the things that gives me a lot of hope for our society, Gen Z,
Yeah.
the most money motivated generation.
Yeah.
Money matters more to Gen Z than any generation since the boomers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can attest to that.
Can you? Yeah. He's looking at me like, when am I going to get paid? We're still on the volunteer program here. By the way, we are looking for a
capitalism
show
may work.
sponsor. So if you guys ever wanted to throw a few dollars into the kitty to help us out, that'd be good.
I'm the kitty. Yeah. That's me.
He's the first one to get paid. So all right, Devlin. Thanks. I think that's it. We're done.
I appreciate the conversation.
Yeah, it's really good.